Hello, I am Mudita, and welcome back to Satisfactory. This is my 1.0 playthrough, where I attempt to load balance all my factories. For some reason, this is what I call fun. In the last video, I got started on my Grassy Fields electronics factory. I have all the ingots and quickwire I need ready for the next floor. However, I miscalculated how much petroleum coke and plastic I have laying around. So today, I'll be adding some more of those, along with a side project or two. I'm finally going to finish that West Coast factory and put a roof on it. We're going to start today out here on the West Coast. So, let's go ahead and fly on over here and take one of my mini hypertubes. Alright, so we've got our lone oil extractor here. And I still have a total of 675 crude oil. So now I'm just going to take these and we'll try to do it nice and clean. So there. And then I'm just going to get these sent into the factory, and it's basically going to go all the way to the other end. So these are just going to run through this little corridor, and then I'm going to send them on through the factory all the way to the other side. Here is the edge of the factory so far. So I'm just going to take this blueprint and I use a 4x4 instead of my 6x6, but you know what, whatever. We're just going to keep it the same. And I'm just going to extend this floor out. I don't need a ton of space. So I'm just going to go out a bit, probably a couple ways this far, but not too many. So we're just going to add on to the front of the factory here. And then I'll most likely do a diagonal across to kind of cut it over. So let me lay some stuff out, and then we'll go through the blueprints I'm going to use for this. Alright, so I've added a little bit of space and added the wall that separates all of that for the modular frames and heavy modular frames, since this is going to be its own little just standalone side of the factory. Just one little room to make up for the mistake of completely getting one of the numbers wrong. Let's take a look at the flowchart real quick. I'll be using 600 crude oil, turning all of it into heavy oil residue, and then from there, we just go straight into petroleum coke. That'll give me 2400 petroleum coke and some bonus polymer resin. And the best part is I need equal amounts of refineries for the heavy oil residue phase as I do with the petroleum coke. And so here's the really simple blueprint. I was able to reuse the same blueprint I've used for heavy oil residue to petroleum coke in other factories, but this time I lifted it up so I could run the power underneath like I've been doing with all the rest of the parts of this factory, so keep things consistent. And like in the last video, we're going to go ahead and use some power shards. I need 20 refineries for both of these steps, but if I divide it by 2.5, I can cut that down to 8. So that means I only need 2 of these blueprints. That sounds way better than dealing with multiples of 5. 8 is a great number to work with. And since I know the exact space, I'm going to put them right here. Alright, so let's clear this one, and let's go ahead and place them. I'm going to have the inputs on this side just to make the pipe work a little bit easier, because then I can kind of send the belts wherever. They're just a lot easier to work with. And make sure that the level of the floor is good. Yep, looks good. And unfortunately, before I can place a second one, I need more power shards. I guess that's the downside to overclocking everything. Well, time to take a train ride. It's time to build a temporary solution for this problem. Ah, home sweet home. And the train station that I just refused to decorate for some reason. I swear, one of these days I am going to decorate this train station. One day. But that's probably not going to be today. I am going to do quite a bit of other decorating. Ah, you know what time it is. Time for the random room again. I think this is all filters. I don't know if I ever showed this off. I made a whole bunch earlier in the game and then just didn't think about them for a while. I really want to set up a permanent one, but apparently that wasn't that day either. Some good old explosive rebar. One day I'll do a weapons factory. I would like to do that. But I'll be honest, that's probably one of those just kind of fun projects after I beat the game. So I'm going to work with this space back here because I know I'm going to need a particle accelerator. Need to pull out the handy dandy MAM, and I can finally unlock this. And now, instead of only power slugs, I can make my synthetic power shards. Oh, this is so cool. I need time crystals, dark matter crystals, quartz crystals, and the excited photonic matter. A lot of crystals going on here. And then that'll give us the dark matter residue, which I'm pretty sure I can turn into dark matter crystals, and hopefully we can make this work. I'm sure I can figure something out. Man, these things are huge. Alright, so we need a quantum encoder, and we'll just go to like right here. Alright, so I can throw down a couple of storage containers. So if we select synthetic power shards. Alright, so this is just a temporary setup, but I should be able to make a few hundred of these, enough to get me to where I can actually like truly automate them. I do have a plan. It's just not today. So I'll feed in some time crystals. I have quartz crystals, and then let's see, we got to figure out the rest of it. Alright, so the easy one is just slapping down a converter right here. Because all we have to do is just select excited photonic matter. And what do we want this clocked at? Oh, 60. Cool. So that won't even use up too much power. Alright, I got the rest of it laid out. So this is how it's going to work. Just a little temporary setup, but we've got the converter. This is doing the excited photonic matter. And then as far as the dark matter residue, which is the byproduct, and getting us the dark matter crystals, here's the issue. I need 10 of these, right? But I'm only getting 60. We're going to have that come out here, and that's going into the particle accelerator. So if I only had 60 incoming, that would only make 6, right? So it's 10 to 1. So here's my solution. We summer sloop it. That'll give me 120, and it gives me the bonus of getting, you know, double the power shards that I normally would. And then over here we can underclock this, and if it's just gonna make 12, that'll intake the 120. It'll make 12, and that thing only needs 10. So I've got a storage container here because eventually that'll fill up, and hopefully we'll have just a few dark matter crystals laying around. That way in the future it'll be easier to jumpstart this sort of a thing, because as it is right now, I don't have anything to get this going. Well, that, and I need to power it. Oh yeah, forgot that that one's going to turn on right away. Ah, that works for me. Alright, so just to get this started, I'm going to go to my actual storage and go grab a few more stacks so I can get it a little bit more going than this. But just to get it started, we'll load that up. And to get everything kick-started, because right now it can't run, that's what this converter is for. This one is going to take 3 animated SAM, so I'm just going to drop a stack into here. And that'll create dark matter residue, which will get me some of the dark matter crystals going, and the whole loop gets started. I guess the smart thing to do would be to just throw that in there. I'm just going to let it go through this stack, and then I'm just going to delete the converter. Man, some of these new items just look so cool. I have no idea what it is, but it looks neat. Oh, my first synthetic power shard. Beautiful. So I've got a storage container, and obviously gonna hook up a dimensional depot. And since this is at a juice, we're just gonna delete that, get my summer sloops back. I'm gonna go to my storage and grab a few more stacks of those so that this can run for a bit longer and crank out enough power shards that I won't have to come back for a little bit. And then I'll meet you back on the west coast, and we can finish that bit of the factory. And now that I'm cranking out 10 a minute, all of a sudden I've got a few power shards. Pretty awesome. So now, you can just copy this blueprint, slap it down right next to this one. Great. Now all I have to do is the pipe work up here in the front. I'm going to bring both of the 300 pipes over instead of combining them into one 600 pipe. I just usually have much better luck doing it that way. So now each pipe will feed 4 of these machines and keeps the system nice and small, real simple. Alright, so I'll probably just bring up the oil from here and here. For the section in between the refineries, it's all done in the blueprint, so the heavy oil residue just gets fed directly into the other refinery. And then all of these do need to connect these two. There we go. That's all I need to do. Now all 400 polymer resin will come out right here. And then with the last machine, this one's also completely overclocked. So each one intakes the 100 heavy oil residue, and I get 300 of the petroleum coke. Alright, now for this step, so I originally set it up like this because it's only every 4 machines gives me a full Mark 6 belt. I thought for sure just make these all Mark 4 and then just make this one a Mark 6. And it should work out, right? There's only 4 machines. Surely it won't have an issue merging it together. And it doesn't for a little while, but just like with the rubber next door, it ended up giving me issues. So a more reliable way to do it was this way. So go back to good old load balancing. Those 2 are there. That one will go here. So we do need to make sure these are all Mark 4 from the machines. These will have 300 on them. And then we'll go to Mark 5 because that'll be 600. And there's the full Mark 6 belt. And this seems to be a more reliable way to get it all on there. I would come back a couple hours later and both of these machines would end up having like a few hundred petroleum coke backed up. So eventually they would start flickering on and off, and I wouldn't be able to rely on the full 1200 there anyway. So there was actually 3 pipes. There was 2 300 and then a 75. I don't really have a good use of the 75. So I'm going to do something really silly with this spot right here. Yeah, I'm going to place a particle accelerator. I figured it would look cool being right in front of the window, you know? And there's this really silly recipe that I never thought I would actually use, but you can turn crude oil directly into diamonds. It's pretty neat. Now, I don't have 200. I only have 75 available, so we'll do 75 divided by 200 and then multiply that by 100, and that should give us a percentage. Yep, so intake 75 and give me a whopping 15 diamonds, but you know what? That's 15 diamonds I didn't have before. What am I going to do with those? I have no idea, but it seemed like a fun way to get rid of 75 oil that was probably just going to sit around and not get used if I didn't do something with it. Alright, so the next step is I need to get those pipes that are way over there and run them probably along the roof and get them plugged in over here, and then create some belt work to take the finished products back over to the train station right over there. So let me get to work and I'll show you what it looks like. Alright, and all of the belt and pipe work is now done, so if we zoom in to the other side of the factory, we can kind of see where the pipes come in right along that wall. And then they come along the floor, and I just built a little glass foundation bridge, and those come right along here. The first 2 pipes are the 300s, and then this last one is the 75. So let's just go ahead and plug this one up, and that'll get that one started in just a minute. These ones, however, I decided to flip off the refineries. So what I'm going to do is just start 1 for each of these pipes and let the machine completely fill up. Once this hits 50, then I'll turn on the second one. And there we go. It just takes a tiny bit longer, but thankfully with so few machines, it's pretty quick. And in a matter of no time, we have 2 completely full Mark 6 belts. So that is 24 petroleum coke that I need. Beautiful. Let's go check on the other process. Yeah, I love the particle accelerators. And here's my handy 15 diamonds a minute. What I'm going to use them for? Who knows? We'll figure that out later. All of this is just going on a little belt bus tour. So I did finally get to use that extra hallway that I have. So these are just going to come through here. So that's 2,400 petroleum coke, 400 resin, and then eventually the 15 diamonds will show up here. And they just go all the way up here and then through that secondary kind of extra hallway that I had. Right down here. So at least now I have something to show off in this empty hallway. And then once we get to here, I figured it was easier just to send them down and underneath, because then I could go in a much straighter path to the train station instead of fitting them in this hallway, taking them down that way to the end and then over. And since I've got a parade of a lot of other items, I didn't feel like I needed to. So those just drop down below and they're going over to the train station where there's some sinks down below. I may have forgotten a belt, but now we're back in business. Well, clearly I need to let this run for a while and see if I've forgotten any other random belts. And I think it's time that I finally finish this factory. I've extended the bottom half here, so now I just need to add the top half and then do the same thing over here now that I know how far this is going to go out. While I let this run for a little while, it's time to do some decorating. I'm going to take good advantage of all the blueprints that I already have to kind of finish off at least the outside walls, but the roof, I'm going to have to see what I come up with. So let me get to work and I'll show you what it looks like. And now my roof has a border. So this took a surprisingly long time to do. So with areas like this, I wanted to get it covered, but trying to get it like absolutely perfect was just really, really hard. So I would have liked for this corner to be centered on this, but then it would have thrown off the distance on here, and yeah, so it's definitely not perfect. And there are some spots where I wish it was just a little bit better, but all in all, it's covered all the things that I wanted it to. I wanted it to overhang at least just a little bit, so as long as it did just a tiny bit, then I was happy. But yeah, working with weird angles and diagonals definitely makes it a little bit more challenging, and there is still some room to grow. We'll put it that way. I'm pretty decent at load balancing, not so much the aesthetics part yet. So now I have lots of walls, and so now I think what I want to do is not just completely cover it flat or anything, and I don't want to make the whole thing just glass. So let's precariously place a blueprint designer right up here. And thankfully, if you hit H, even if it says normally it can't place it, most of the time when you hit H, it'll let you. I've come up with a couple blueprints that I think will be a little bit different. I've seen this in plenty of other people's factories, but I've never done it myself, so I thought it would be fun to do, where you kind of have a little ramp and then some windows. So those will let some light into the factory and give me a little bit of depth on the roof. I think it'll be neat, at least something new to try out for me. So this is the middle piece. And since this is using the Mark III, this takes up a whole 6x6 area. So it should be pretty easy to kind of map out where I want these to go and place them. And then I have two more, this one and one other, that just have a bunch of walls on one end so that I can kind of close them off instead of having just this giant gap. So what I'm probably going to do is definitely over the parts where, you know, there's a wall, I'm going to fill in with normal foundations. But then there will be a whole bunch of sections that are just normal concrete, and then I'll have a gap of 6 foundations. So like something like right there, and then I'll just do a whole row of those blueprints so that I can get some good light in there, and I don't know, I think it'll give the roof a different look. And then I'll just have a couple of those rows going back. But the whole centerpiece, that one I'm probably going to do all glass, but I'm going to make it a little bit taller, and well, let me get to work and then I'll show you what it all looks like. And there it is. I finally finished a factory. That's not true. I finished a couple. But for a large factory, I'm pretty happy. So from far away, I think they look pretty good. When you get up close, these things are actually really huge. And this factory is gigantic. I love the sound of your helmet hitting the window. I think it's so funny. There's a yellow light. It's a good thing all of this has just been sinking. Yeah, there's a yellow light. All right, well, time to do some investigating. Gonna have to figure out what's going on wrong there. But let me show you everything else first. So, like I said, I just added a couple. I don't want to add too many where it was just solid these things everywhere. I kind of wanted them to be spaced out a little bit. and then just one long one in the back. And this right here gives us a nice little view if for some reason you're on the roof. Good old progress. So this one sticks up a little bit higher than the rest of them. But other than that, I decided to just keep it relatively simple. Nothing too crazy, but at least it's finished. And you know, that's a step in the right direction for me. And from the inside, it did get a little bit darker because now there's a roof over most of it. But I think it turned out alright. If I didn't have Sky UI and I actually had to play at night, then I may want to add some lights. But for right now, I think I'm going to leave it without it. And I did change it because originally in this factory I had these all windows, but I just didn't like that you couldn't walk through here. So I'm much happier with this look. And it functions much easier. Take a look at the good old chaos of the iron room here. 98%. Well, it's definitely not the water. That seems surprising to me. Time for me to do some investigating. Well, I think I found the problem. And it's this setup. I was always a little curious if this would end up biting me in the end. And unfortunately, it just doesn't quite work as well. I thought it would be easier to just do the load balancing with it all together. Because what's happening right here is each of these train lines are bringing in 560. Because what I want is 1120 on this line. So there's supposed to be gaps, but apparently there's just a little bit too many. Really thought that this would work, but that's why everything is just sinking right now and I don't actually need it. So by me tearing this up slightly, it'll pause production for a little bit, but it'll all be worth it in the end. So right now it's getting emptied into here, and then using a Mark V, it's going into a merger. So since mergers should take, you know, one from this side, one from this side, when it's like this, that should be 600 from each of these going into here. But unfortunately, it's all backed up, and now I have tons of extra iron because ever so slightly, this hasn't been running quite at the right amount. It hasn't been sending 1120, it's only been sending 1100 or something. Probably more than that, but you get the picture. So instead of doing it this way, which I was never super crazy about, but it was easy, so I'm going to do the smart thing and just load balance each one individually and then merge those two. So this right here is going to do 560, so I can merge up the two of them afterwards instead of beforehand, and I'll have my 1120 line. All right, let me try to go through this real quickly. So there are probably simpler ways to do this. I just love to pick the most complicated. So we've got a Mark V, so that is 780, and then we're going into a splitter. So Mark III and Mark V. So this should keep it completely full because this is less than half of what this belt is. So this one will be full, and that would be 270 going that way and 510 on this belt. So we've got a full 270 belt here, sending that into a splitter. And now we've got a Mark III and a Mark I. So since this one is full, that should keep this one full. So we've got 60 here, 210 here. And then we've got the 60, and that's going right into a splitter. And then we're going to split it all three ways. So here's 20, here's 20, and here's 20. This 20 is then going to get split in half. So here's 10, and here's 10. So this was 210 plus our 10. So right here is 220. We take 780. We subtract 220. We've got the 560 I was looking for. And everything else just gets grouped up right here. All right, and for this, I'm basically just going to trash just tons of iron ore. I'm going to keep a little bit so that we're not just completely empty here. And then we'll just stop everything from running. Like I said, it's going to mess up production for just a few minutes. Oh, of course, I shouldn't have picked up all that. Oh, now I've got crates everywhere to deal with. All right, well, let me clean this up and swap it all over, and I'll show you what it looks like. Ended up having the bonus of saving me a little bit of space. So thankfully these just barely fit, and I was able to tuck a bunch of it underneath here. And so far the load balancing seems to be working out, as far as I can tell. So I've got two of them, each one putting out the 560 and then merging up onto the Mark VI. So they seem to be merging fine, and the only way to really be able to tell is I'm going to have to check all those refineries in, you know, an hour or so and make sure that everything's actually at 100% instead of 98 or 99. So far, so good, though. Besides some more just final touches, maybe a couple more hyper tubes to clean things up on the inside, this factory is more or less done. So I've got the petroleum coke that I was missing. The other thing that I was missing from my electronics factory is plastic. And if we take a look at the map, I've already used up all the oil here. That 75 wasn't going to be enough to make the 500 that I need. The electronics factory down here, honestly, it would probably make the most sense to come over here and use the oil that's down in the blue crater. It's nice and close. But how often do I do the smart thing? Instead, what I'm going to do is build a nice train line that goes all the way around here. Goes all the way over to the Spire Coast. I'm going to bring that 400 polymer resin that I'm making here and send it up here. And that way I can make the plastic a little bit more efficiently. This is the last piece that isn't kind of connected. From here, you can go all the way around to here. So I really wanted a train line that connected these two. And by having that train line there, when I finally build a factory out in this desert, I can kind of build on top of it to go in either direction. And so I got started on it. I'm just going to use this top floor because I think I'm going to have plenty of cargo capacity with just 2 train lines right now. So this is the next project for me. I am going to extend this train line. Now, I think at this point, now that I've turned and kind of gotten away from the train station, I think this is where I'll start to drop it down. And again, ramps going down are awkward. I don't know of a good way except for just laying down some more foundations like this, but now I can aim at these foundations and get it lined up just right. I just need to extend my rail that actually has power. And I can keep on building. So I'm going to bring this down not too low. Definitely want to go over this piece, but that's probably enough. I don't think I'll go all the way to the water because one of the things I want to do is cut this one probably right through here, and then that'll leave tons of area open out here if I need a whole bunch of water extractors. And then as long as there's space underneath, I can run all the pipes under my train line. So that's the next project, is getting this to go all the way out to the Spire Coast. Let's go ahead and fast forward a few hours. So it's definitely not finished, but made some good progress, so let's go on a quick train ride. End of the line so far. If we take a look at the map, so we're right here. And here is the nitrogen and sulfur train station that's feeding the rocket fuel for over there. So my plan right now is to basically combine these. So this line is going to end up going on top of that one. Let me fly over there real quick and I'll show you what I mean. Alright, so now I can take this and put it in blueprint mode, and I can just snap this right on top. I'm just going to add another second layer like I've done to some of my other ones. Great thing about this is I've already figured out exactly what I need. So as long as I directly copy whatever is straight underneath it, which thankfully for a whole bunch of this, it's straight for a long time. But once I get to the curve, I really don't have to do too much work. I just copy whatever's directly below and just do the same thing. So nice and easy. But this side, I think what I'm going to do is go out a little bit farther. So probably I'll put a pillar one here. And then from here, I'll probably ramp down. And what I should have done is brought out a foundation all the way over here so I could get the distance just right. So I'm probably going to have to do that. Thankfully, it's really not that far. It takes a couple minutes, I guess, to lay it all out and then delete it. But then I can make sure that the height is exactly right and just kind of go down in one ramp and then not have to mess with it once I get closer. I don't think I really explained it, but the reason why I went over there and started building work kind of backwards is I think that's the easiest way to merge up the two, is kind of do it right around the curve. Gives you the most flexibility. I did end up with one wiggly part of the track there, but the grids ended up just being like just a tiny amount off in the horizontal direction here. So unfortunately, that was the best I could do, but thankfully, I don't imagine I'll come out to the very corner of the world too much. So let's finish this train ride. Made it back to the Spire Coast. Now I need to add a third floor to this train station, and I think I should probably add a few more walls. This is looking a little too bare bones for me. Taking a look at the map, I've got a whole bunch of oil still out here. Today, I think I'm just going to use this normal and this impure, which still leaves me with a pure, normal, and I think 2 impures. Yep. Still a good amount left out here. The equivalent of 2 pures still out here left to do who knows what. Well, first things first, what I want to do is add the third floor, get another train station set up so that I can get this train running and I can test the throughput and make sure, even though it's a pretty long trip, I don't think there's going to be any issue because the polymer resin stacks to 200 and I'm only transporting 400 out here. But I like to test that and get it out of the way first just to make sure. Well, it still needs a roof, but at least it has more walls now. And unfortunately, there is a little bit of clipping because of where the train tracks came in. The easiest way was just to clip the blueprints into each other. So I just made a new blueprint for this wall section that kind of kept the same theme, but instead of doing half foundations kind of in a tiered form like that, I just have the half foundations going straight out. And then with the very corners, I just use the inverted corner ramps. And then right on the edge, instead of having just the bare foundation right there, I just place portrait signs because they're the same width this way. Doesn't look quite right. There we go. Let's copy and paste. And then with the chrome finish, it gives it that cool little shine. So I thought that was a fun way to close off the corners. I accidentally delete. There we go. So just some half foundations that are 2 meters thick and then a inverted 2-meter ramp on this downside, just to kind of give it that look, a little bit more depth in the build. I'm pretty happy with the way it came out. So the train is running already. Let's see if we have some throughput numbers. 422. Okay, so far so good, because that's actually higher than what it should be. There's only 400 available. So that's just coming down below here, and then I'm just running it along the roof, because my underneath the train station logistics floor has gotten a little bit busy. So it just runs over to here, and then I'm using one of my train balancer 400s to take it down so that it's load balanced to just 400 going out here. So right now I'm just syncing it just to make sure that everything's working fine. And I still have a little bit of space here to do some load balancing, which I'm sure I'll need to do. And then I'll create a bus somewhere over here, and it'll head on out. Then I'm just going to take the next spot over. So let me throw down some foundations and we'll get the next factory started. And here's my rubber and plastic factory that's just making a nice little amount of both of them. I think it's like 360 of each. Not too bad. So I'm just going to add another factory right next door. Building on the ocean is just so easy, and I really like the way the Spire Coast looks. I don't want to add a big building right in the middle of it. And like with most oil projects, I need some water, so it's just easy. Let's run through the blueprints. So over at the West Coast, I created these blueprints that'll do the recycled rubber, and I could just flip the recipes. Instead of it being plastic into rubber, we could do rubber into plastic, and I could just reuse the same ones. Where is the fun in that? The link to the flowchart will be pinned in the comments, but it's going to be fairly straightforward for most of these. Not anything crazy new. Done this a few times. But this time, I'm going to do some overclocking. So the refineries doing the heavy oil residue will make 90 apiece, so they'll be clocked to 225. And then the blender will take the 90 heavy oil residue, 180 water, and I'll get 180 fuel. So real simple blueprint. I'll be able to put these right next to each other and then connect the crude oil pipes. And then down below, I've just got a belt for the polymer resin, and then all of the power connections down here. And then we're using 4 refineries on the next step. These are all set to do the residual plastic, so I'm going to be taking the polymer resin that I'm making in the first step, plus the 400 that's coming in from the train station. And I think I'll still need a little bit extra. Thankfully, I've got some out here. And then 30 water per refinery, and that's going to create 30 plastic. These are only overclocked to 150% to 30, and you'll see why in a minute. Just real basic load balancing for all 4 of them. On this side, I'm not grouping them up, and I could probably add the lifts already, but We'll just do that later. There's not too many of these we have to place. And last but not least, the final step. So the first row are all painted black because they're going to be creating the rubber using the recycled rubber recipe. So these intake 30 plastic, 30 fuel, and they're going to spit out 60 rubber per refinery. These I'm leaving at 100%. And the reason for that is they can directly feed into the next machine, which is going to be overclocked to 200% so that they can intake 60 and then output 120. Because I really love doing setups like these. Really hard to go wrong, to be honest. And then as far as the fuel goes, these machines are going to use 60. These machines are going to use 30 each. So 4 refineries are basically paired up. So each one of these will be fed by one of those blenders, which happens to take up pretty much the same amount of space. All right, let me clear this out. Get to placing some machines. And here is the first blueprint. So we can go ahead and place this here. I'm just going to give myself 3 foundations on both the side and the front. I think that should be plenty of space. So I just need 2 of these. And actually, I'm just going to need 2 of pretty much all of these. And the best part is I designed these to all be able to line up with each other. So I can just put it in blueprint mode. And we'll get the second one placed. Oh yeah, I forgot. Even though it's taller, it still works fine in blueprint mode. So snap that there. And that one there. And just like that, I have all the machines I need to make it's over 900 plastic. Alright, so let's run through some of this. So with these ones, we could just connect those pipes. I'll probably clean up the ends. The only other part I need to do is connect these. Perfect. For the fuel, that needs to get plugged in over here. So I'm just going to feed these down below. So we can just put a floor hole in front of all these ones. We're gonna have to get rid of those. Moving on to the next step, we just need to load balance these 2, which should be pretty easy to do. So we just need to join up the 2, so we'll just take a temporary splitter on both of these, and let's see, what speed do we need? The 4 of them together would be 360. So if we just start off with a Mark 1, delete them, delete the splitters. Now we can change it to the correct Mark 4, and we can get rid of that really long accordion. Perfect. All right, and then we place one more splitter here in the middle. Connect both of those, and then I'll be able to plug in the 720 polymer resin here. There we go. Actually, what we can do, so depending on how you connect it is where the items are going to show up. So that's going to face in, but that's no fun. So if I go from the machine down to the floor, now I can spin it around. So it's a little bit easier to see the polymer resin going up. And as far as the water goes, each group of 4 will need 120. So yeah, I'll probably leave those as 2 separate pipes because that'll just be 1 water extractor each. And the next step is real easy. So I probably could have just included these, but I wasn't quite sure on the height. And yep, it's just the default height. But thankfully, there's only 8 of these to place. Now I can just connect the belt straight into here. And that step's done. This step is already included. So we just need to do the fuel, which is pretty simple. And the only thing I don't like is I only gave myself 3 meters, which I usually try to avoid when working with pipes underneath. Because this is the best I can really do is get it close, and it's still going to have that ever so slight dip before it goes back up. So 3 meters is perfect for belts, but 4 meters is probably a better amount for pipes. But we take that and we'll put it back into horizontal to vertical. So if we bring this out to the halfway mark and then we bring this one out to here, we can get a nice little S-bend, 90-degree turns. Perfect. I'll do that for the other 4, and that will feed all of these refineries with the fuel they need. And then each one of these machines will output 120 plastic. So I need some Mark II lifts, and I'm just going to bring them all the way down to the floor. Now I'm going to take a merger and place it right on the seam of here, just so I can get a nice view of all of the plastic running out of the machines. And then I'll connect all these with the Mark 6 belt because in total I'll have 960. And the majority of the belt and pipe work is that easy. So now I need to grab some crude oil and plug it in over here, but I only need 270. One normal node on a Mark 1 pipe, keep it nice and simple. And some water extractors. And my plan is to add the water extractors back here. But the truth is, I had another plan for coming all the way out here. And that is the other half of this factory. I want to build some packaged rocket fuel, because that's what's going to fuel my drone army. But now that I know where basically half of this factory is going to go, and I can kind of figure out where the midpoint is, this is kind of where I want the crude oil to come in, somewhere in the middle. Because one pipe is going to go here, the normal one, and then the impure node is going to go to the other side to make the rocket fuel. So that's all I need. I need very little crude oil to make all the rocket fuel I'll need for drones. So that's what I'm going to work on next if we take a look at the map. So I'm going to grab these two nodes, and I'm not quite sure which way. If going up this way and over would be better, or if I should go this way and over. Once I get out there, it'll be easier to see which path is better. So let me take care of that, and then we'll work on the second half of the factory. Extracting all that beautiful oil out of the ground. So added two more. So here is the normal. Means that one's the impure. So these just come right along here. Did pretty much the same thing I normally do, and just leave a foundation where I have the pipeline supports, and it gives me somewhere to run the power. So I can conveniently just run those along. So I decided to take my pipeline and run it just behind this one, and I thought that would be the easiest way, and I could kind of snake it right through here, and then right around the train tracks, and then on into the factory. I went ahead and got them turned on so that I could fill up the pipes, because it's quite a bit of pipe, and I didn't want to have to wait for it later. And just to kind of give myself an idea of how many pipes and how much space it was going to take, so that I could decide how big I wanted the very middle of the factory to be. I did the basics for the water extractors, but I'm going to wait to do this other side and then place all of the water extractors back there, just so I can make sure I can fit them all. Okay, with those out of the way, let's run through some more blueprints. But before we go through the blueprints, let's quickly run through the flow chart. So I know this looks a bit busy, but part of that is because I'm leaving it so that if you wanted to create this, this is the whole flow chart. Now for me, the reason I did this was I get to cut a little bit of this out. Not a ton, but you know, a little bit. And that's the compacted coal. So thankfully, I don't need the 190 coal or sulfur to get this going. Because if we look right over here, my fantastic rocket fuel power plant that has been supplying the large majority of the power in my world has an excess of 400 compacted coal per minute. And I'm finally going to put at least 190 of it to good use by creating more rocket fuel. So I'll send all 400 of it to the train station. I'll do the load balancing down there, and then 190 of it, along with the polymer resin that I need for this section of the factory, will come on over here. So with that out of the way, the process is fairly simple. We take the 135 crude oil, make heavy oil residue, mix in some water, and I've got 360 fuel. The 190 compacted coal is almost all. And the way the recipe works is rocket fuel has a byproduct of compacted coal, and that's going to give me 50 for the grand total of the 240 that I need to make all the turbo fuel. Once I have the turbo fuel, making rocket fuel is pretty easy. I just need to mix in nitric acid. So for that, I need 200 nitrogen gas, more water, which is plenty easy, and 16 2/3 iron plates, which is not an amount I usually try to work with, but I'll figure something out. The other bonus of having already built the rocket fuel out here is I actually have more nitrogen gas being sent out here than I need. And so I should be able to siphon off 200 of it without a problem. You know, and if I screw it up, it's just my whole world's power crashes, that's all. So I realized I don't really need new blueprints, because what I can easily do is just use this one. And since this one is going to have half the amount of fuel that one does, I actually only need one. Pretty nice. But I am going to fill in the rest of the area, because something is still going to go here. This is where the lone blender that I need to make the nitric acid will go. So nitric acid, this one does need 2 power shards because I need 50 a minute. And since someone reminded me that nitric acid is actually a really light green, and this is the lightest green I have, so it's probably too green. But that's okay. It's my favorite color. Any excuse to throw more green in my factories. And then for the next step of this process, I'm actually going to use the next step of the other one. These can snap in right behind. Oh, I did need one more. Okay, there we go. But these aren't going to be making residual plastic. This is going to be making our good old turbo fuel. And with these, I am going to overclock them to 200%, which means each machine will need 45 fuel. Let's get these recolored. And before I forget, let's copy and paste these recipes. And these pipes are going to be fuel, not water. Alright, so 45 each and 4 machines per one of these pipes, so that would be 180. And that is how much fuel each one of these puts out. So I'm just going to connect one of these blenders with one of these sets of 4 refineries, and that'll feed all the fuel it needs. And then I'll be able to do all the load balancing for the compacted coal all together. Place my lifts, and then we can see, so 30 for each machine. So set of 4 is going to need to be Mark II. And we can feed Mark II into here. Delete these ones. And that's where I'll send the 240 compacted coal into the system. Now to actually turn this into rocket fuel, what I'm going to do is just copy this because I want to keep things symmetrical because I am a sucker for symmetry. So we'll make sure that the height is the same as the other side of the factory. Make this the same size. Perfect. Because this one, I am just going to freehand, basically. Alright, so that is half. So this is the halfway mark right here for each one of these. I'll get rid of all that. And yeah, that looks good. So we'll put it in basically the same spot on this side. Be right about there. Yep, looks good. And we're just using the regular rocket fuel recipe. And let's see, so 37.5. I guess it would help if I put that decimal point in there. There we go. So group of 4 is going to output 150 rocket fuel. I think if I do it here, I can get... There we go. Yep. All right. So if that's there, that means the ones joining up these 2 machines needs to be 1, 2, 3 closer. So for belts and mergers and stuff, it's 4 meters, but for pipes, it's only 3 to get the right angle. Oh, I can't wait for straight pipes. Right now, I'm stuck doing that. And then I'll color all of this red. This is turbo fuel. All right, so that's how I'll group up these. And that's going to be the turbo fuel. And for these, I'm going to go with the outside one for both of these. Because in the middle here is where the nitric acid is going to get plugged in. So I just wanted to find the middle. And that's an easy way because pretty much always puts those things in the middle. All right, and this one will be our nitric acid. And since I don't need to deal with the solids, it doesn't matter that I made that pipe super close. But this is going to give me the 10 compacted coal, so I do have to deal with that. And I'll go over that in a minute. The last thing I need here is a packager. And well, let's just do... Yeah, let's make things centered. I might make things a little bit weird, but I think it'll look better this way. Okay, so let's figure out the overclocking. In total, I'll be plugging in 150, which actually I think is, yeah, this completely overclocked. I love it when it works out like that. All right, so each one of these is going to be kicking out 250 rocket fuel. All right, and then from here, we'll go back to, bring it up. And now we'll just get rid of both of the pipeline supports. It's a nice short pipe. I think it looks fine. Now each packager is going to be set for package rocket fuel. Oh, but completely overclocked is actually too much. I only need to be 125. That'll intake the 25, spit out 125 package rocket fuel. Now the other piece is the empty fluid tanks. And for that, I am just going to place 2 constructors right here. I always forget that's in containers. All right, so each one of these needs to be overclocked. And we are going to make 125. Copy and paste those. Just barely needs a Mark III. Get those sent in there. And Go ahead and just place a splitter right here. Same thing, Mark 3 for both of these. And right below is where I'll feed in the 250 aluminum ingots that I need for this. It's like a glove. All right, so that'll take care of the empty canisters. And then that will package all of the rocket fuel. So from here, I can just merge up the two outputs. Let's see, there's 125 and there's 125. And there's my rocket fuel. So this ended up being a pretty small and compact system, and I'm pretty happy with it. The next part for me is going to be filling in the rest of these pipes. There's probably a couple belts that I need to finish, connect all of the power connections up so that it's all on one switch. And then I need to lay down the water extractors and get those to the right speeds because they're not all going to be the same. Some are 120, some are 180. I think one of them needs to be 240. And now it's time to get back to work. You can just barely see from all the way out here, but I do have some water extractors down. We'll go through that in a little bit. I still need to do a little bit more pipe work over there. The other thing I wanted to get done was the bus. So I ran that center part just on top of the pipes, and then this part just kind of joins up with it. And so I've got the nitrogen and then two belts. So if we head on in here, let's take a look. All right, so here is the nitrogen. So let's just go over that real quickly. Revisit this mess. Each one of the freight cars is bringing 300 meters cubed of the nitrogen gas, which is more than I need. But I had already set it up so they were all combined, and I didn't really want to just completely break it up and replug it back in. Because right now that power plant makes up just like 80% of my power. Pretty much any of the other factories I can deal with if I screw up production for a while. This one has some consequences. So what I did was just siphon off a little bit from each side. So this connection was open on each one of those because basically I only need one of these to feed one of these pipes, but I had taken this middle one and split it half to go this way and half to go that way. For some reason I thought I needed 400 per pipe, and then I was just gonna basically be wasting 50. And then it turned out that no, I just can't read my own spreadsheet sometimes. So in theory, I should be able to just delete this, and I just need one freight car to feed each one of these pipes, and it would work fine. But like I said, I really rather not screw things up, so I just added another pipe onto this connection. I added a valve, and these are set to 110. So I only need 100 from each side, and that way while the pipe is filling up, when I first connected it, it didn't take too much out of here at once since I can't carry 600 meters cubed. Because again, I really just don't want to lose power to my whole world. So trying to be careful and not trigger just a domino effect of having to spend hours fixing everything. And so that's how I got my 200 nitrogen gas. So thankfully I had plenty laying around. I need 190 compacted coal, 540 polymer resin. So the polymer resin is going to come through here. So this section is being sunk right now, which is 180 polymer resin, and that's coming from my plastic and rubber factory right there. So we're going to use some of it. What's going to happen is this is going to get deleted, and then I'm going to send it in right here, thanks to my handy green arrow. And the remaining 40 is going to pop back out because I have 400 polymer resin coming from the train. Coming from the West Coast where I just made all that Petroleum Coke. That's where the 400 is going, so I just needed to add 140 to get the right amount of polymer resin. And so we just take the 180 and we plug it into here. So that's 60, 60, and 60. And then if we take this 60 and we split it all three ways, there's 20, 20, and 20. So if we combine two of those, that's the 40 I don't need. And the rest of it gets grouped together to make the 140. And this right here is where I'm going to plug in. Just A plugs into A. So that's the 400 from the train. We'll group that up with the 140. And here's the 540 that I need. As far as the compacted coal, that's where I ended up using this spot right here. So this right here is coming from the rocket fuel factory. And so that's a 400 line. And we just need to split it down to 190. So first things first, we just split it in half. So now I have 200 and 200. And then from here, I decided to just use a smart splitter. Makes it a little bit easier. Priority is to the center, overflow is to the left. So we've got a Mark II, but that's going to get limited down to a Mark I. So here's 60, and let's make this 140. So out of the 60, we split that in half. Here's 30 and here's 30. With this 30, we split it all 3 ways, so 10, 10, and 10. All of this was to subtract 10. Here's 210. Here's 190. Alright, so one other thing I'm going to do is add a hypertube like I've done with all the rest of them, so that'll just run right on top of this bus and over into the factory. And here are the water extractors. This is the one that's overclocked the most, but I only needed one of those. I think this is for the residual plastic. And then the majority of these are going to be overclocked to 180. And then that guy at the very end, I think is only clocked like 50. Yeah, this one's feeding the nitric acid, so it only needs 50 per minute. And so these 3 feed this half, and then the majority of the water goes to making the plastic. So there's 2 last major pieces that I haven't dealt with. And that's the iron plates, which I need very few of, 16.66 repeating, and then 250 aluminum. Originally, my plan was just to run a train line from here, basically all the way out to here. But it would probably have to go through here, and then I'd bring it down here somewhere, and then it would snake around. It wouldn't be too long of a journey, especially because I only need 250 per minute. So that part wouldn't have been an issue at all. But I think that's basically the only aluminum out here, and I don't need any of these products to go back up to the Red Forest. So it does feel a little bit excessive to run a train line from all the way out there to here just for that. I am about to create a whole bunch of fuel for drones, so I have the bright idea to use drones to provide necessary parts to create the fuel to fuel those said drones. Yeah, what could possibly go wrong? Well, to put that off for a little bit longer, I decided to start with the back wall. And so I think this is what I'm going to do for this section back here. And then I decided to start working on some blueprints. I didn't know where else to put them, so I just added a new category that has currently 1 blueprint. My drones and stuffs. So I kind of figure I'll make probably a couple different versions like this, most likely just a single drone port where I need those. But in places like this, I can easily use 2. And now with the 6x6 blueprint, I can fit 2 drone ports next to each other, which is just so cool. So I'm just using just the basic fix-it walls, and that way I figure I can recolor this, and then if I want to color coordinate, what it's carrying or something like that, or maybe change the color for a different factory and keep the different themes going, it's nice and easy with fix-it walls. I really need to use the patterns more because now I don't have to worry about stupid color cartridges. It's such a great change, and I really haven't been taking advantage of the patterns nearly enough. And then I just wanted somewhere to easily run the power. It's just kind of weird to place the power connection on these sometimes, so this is what I went with and just added some signs for a little bit extra highlights. And then I'm just using the low barrier. This is the same blueprint that I've used for a whole bunch of them, which I absolutely stole from Total Eclipse. But it's great. Just using the sign clipped into the low barriers, it's a great look. A little bit of a pain to change the colors because I don't think I can access it without deleting the barrier. So you kind of have to decide what color you're going for ahead of time. Other than that, it's fantastic. There's a good chance that the front will have to change, like depending on where I want things to plug up. I may need to move a door all the way to one side or something like that. I'm just going to leave this as is, and if it stays in the center, I'll probably add some like beams or something, but I didn't want to add too much because I kind of figured, just like with the housing I have for the miners, it gets changed around a lot is what I envision. And so I kept the inside really bare bones because each one of these is probably going to change a good amount. I don't really know if it's importing or exporting, and I can't set up the load balancing for the right amount ahead of time. So all I could really do is add a splitter and the lifts and belts to feed the fuel. So all I have to do is plug the fuel source into there and both drone ports will get fed. And then I'll just have to figure out how I want to do load balancing. When I do my load balancing for, exporting things, for both truck stops and drone ports, the belts don't ever pause when the vehicle is using it. But on the unload, I'm still going to use a buffer because I want to load balance it. And I can't really think of a better way to do it. So thankfully, the small one fits in here really well. Unfortunately, the industrial storage container will poke through the floor, and I'm not crazy about that. Because this right now is even with this level of the drone port, so I really wanted to keep it the same. So I'm hoping that most of the time I'll be able to get away with just using the small normal storage container. And so this is what I've got so far. All right, let's take a look. So this side is going to do our imports. So we've got drone fuel, aluminum in, and then my iron plates in. So I'm just going to use drones for both of these. And then this set right here, I am going to plug the rocket fuel into here. And then these are both going to be open. And what I mean by that is these drone ports are never going to have a drone dedicated to them. Because drones can only have one other port assigned to them. But you can have lots of other ports in your world assigned to the same one. Any drone that has this as the destination can come here and pick up the fuel. So if I end up with a bunch of drone ports at my main factory, and then another set down in the swamp, and another in the grassy fields, I can have one drone port at each one of these spots dedicated to coming to one of these two, and that'll be able to come here, pick up the fuel, and fuel all of the other drones. And then on the inside, it's actually pretty simple. It looks more chaotic than it is. So the initial amount comes in here and goes to a smart splitter. Ultimately, when everything else fills up, I'm going to have a overflow, and that's going to go to the sink that's right outside. But the priority is going to go here. Really, this one doesn't need to be a smart splitter. A normal one would have worked fine. But I really wanted to make sure that both the center and the right output had priority over left. And the reason for that is center is going to power these two drone ports, and to the right is actually going to go underneath. So this definitely isn't my favorite thing to do. But the advantage is I can just run it underneath this, because sure, I could have brought it out and I could have gone over here and back down and fed it with fuel. But the way the fuel lines work is they're just going to be sitting still most of the time. And I just didn't like the way that was going to look. So I just covered it up instead. And so normally I don't completely hide logistics like that. But this is one of those places where I don't really mind. It's something I'm just never going to think about. But by doing that, it will ensure that these two have fuel, because I need those to bring my iron plates and the aluminum so that I can keep making more fuel. All right, now that I have these ones here, now I need to go set up the other side. So I think I'll start with the easy one and do aluminum. I will see you over in the red forest. I love this train station. It's just so busy. And I've added some more. So let's go through it real quick. The way this is going to work is I'm going to have some drone ports out here, and I'm going to have to build those next. I'll probably just add 2 drone ports, even though I only have a use for one of them right now. I know I'll be able to use at least one more drone out here. So I'm going to put 2 of them out here, but I needed to get the load balancing done first. So out of the ones that I have available, just ignore that for now. There's a reason it's right there. All right, that's right. So we got the smart splitter. Makes sense. But the overflow is straight ahead. The priority is to this side. And then this is just a normal splitter. So I'm taking 600 and I'm putting that on a train. And then this 600 has just been sinking the whole time. So what I'm going to do is when I'm ready, I'm going to delete this. And then I am going to place a lift here. And then it'll be able to connect to this spot. And that way it'll have the nice right angle sticking out this way, which will be almost in line with this. All right, well, I'm going to have to fix that. It's ever so slightly not lined up now. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit crooked. Well, let's just ignore that for a second, and I'll fix it later. So we'll have 600 come up here with the lift, and then I'm just going to connect that lift to this one. So it's going to come on down here and go into this splitter. So we're going to take 600 and split it all 3 ways. So 200, 200, and 200. We take this 200 and then we split it in half. So here's 100 and here's 100. This 100 then gets split in half. So here's 50, and that's combining with that 200. So here's the 250 that I need for my rocket fuel. The other 50 is just going to come up here, merge up with the rest of it, and go back on into the sink. And now I'll still have 350 available on this line. Pretty easy. Just gonna take this belt and it's gonna come out to somewhere over here. So for this, it's real nice and easy. There's no point in using the blueprint I don't need the extra space in front if I'm just loading them, because like I said, I don't need a buffer on the loading side for drone ports, really just for trains. And then if it ever backs up, I've got the overflow with the smart splitter set up, so it'll just get sunk if it does. Well, I think we can just set it right here, and then I'll get it loaded. Then I'll probably have a second one right there, and we'll be able to use that for something else. Well, I've been putting it off long enough. It's time to finally figure out how to make 16 2/3 iron plates. Oh boy. I never thought I would have to mess with this somewhere. I mean, it was easy to make 4.1666 or I can't even remember what this is feed. Oh, the nitric acid for my package rocket fuel, actually. How ironic. I have to deal with this again for more rocket fuel. But it turns out this is the easy solution. And I can't believe how easy it is. Because it turns out 16 2/3, multiply that by 3, well, it's 50. I'm making 150 iron plates. Originally, all 150 were going to storage. And then I made all of this mess to just siphon off 4 and whatever that is. And that's going over to make nitric acid and the rocket fuel. To get down to that number, what I did was take the 150 and then I split it all 3 ways. So here's 50, here's 50, and here's 50. This one and this one are just getting grouped up together, and then I just worked with that one. So now all I need to do is add a splitter, and let's see. So we could do something like that, I guess. I don't know. I may clean this up and do it in a slightly different way. But I'm gonna delete this right here, right? And I'm gonna move it to here. And so this one and this one will go here. Actually, what we can't do, we can actually just delete this now. There we go. Because all it's gonna do is split it up and remerge it to be exactly the same. But now what I can do is this right here as my 16 2/3. And then I just need to adjust this number and add another sign. And that's the load balancing. I thought it was going to be so much worse. There's finally a roof over, well, half. Sort of half. I don't think I'm going to add any more floors, but in case I change my mind, I can still go up higher over there. But this is plenty space to put as many drone ports as I can reasonably think of. So I made a second version of this drone port. This one basically just has a street light clipped through it, which surprisingly enough is kind of a pain to put there. I had to delete the drone port, add something to snap it to, and then you can place the drone port there because it does not want to snap here. Even if you had a foundation that went to like right here, the drone ports stick above it and it won't let you stick anything there. But since it's on the roof, that way I figured it would have a little bit more light up here. And then on the inside, it's just real simple. It's just getting plugged straight in and, oh yeah, power. Always handy. And just so I could get this running now and I don't have to run over here later, I just have an emergency awesome sink. So it's gonna fill up super slowly, but decorating does take some time. So just in case it takes me too long to finish decorating, I don't want this to back up. So I've got the emergency smart splitter with the overflow going to the awesome sink. When the factory is done and up and running, I'm just going to come over here and delete this, and then I'll reconnect that. But this way I don't have to worry about things getting backed up while I finish the factory, which is basically all I have left. I think I've taken care of all of the major pieces, so now I need to put some walls and a roof on there, and then we'll go ahead and take a tour. The factory is ready. Let's take a tour. I decided to get the compacted coal and the polymer resin up to this point and just get them sinking here. And then when I'm ready for each one, I'll delete that and reconnect the belt. It's just the easiest way I could think of to get everything started, but we'll go through that in a second. So with the front of this, I wanted to do something a little bit different and decided not to use blueprints. The sides definitely are, and I'll go through that in a second. But the front, I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I started with just using the double ramps and just a regular ramp to get it started. And so I could kind of make this X shape. And then I decided to just kind of continue that pattern all the way out by just skipping 2 foundations and then starting another one, skipping 2, and then another one. And then I just did that on both sides, and it created a pretty cool pattern that I liked. And then I decided I really wanted some lights on there. Now, the issue is, if you've ever tried to do this, so if you've got just the ramps here, and then I take my 4-meter label sign, you can rotate it, but by default, it'll only rotate in 45 degrees. If you hold control, you can get finer degrees, but if you'll notice, I can't actually get the same diagonal that these ramps are at, which is a little annoying. So my next thought was, well, surely they'll be able to snap to beams. So if I just run a beam from there to there, now I can grab my sign and now it'll work, right? And no, it works the same as the foundations. Then I remembered the pillars are a little bit different. So now if I take a pillar and I zoop it on top of that beam, which, you know, you'd really want to delete the beam because it's kind of just wasting space there. Now when I spin it, I can actually get it to clip to the pillar itself. And so that's basically what I did, and so it gave the added benefit of adding a little bit more depth and giving me some more places to place some color. But it was also the best way I could think of to get just the right angle for the lights. So I figured the main entrance would be coming through the hyper tube, but you know, just in case, it's good to have a normal entrance too. So you can enter through the bottom here, and then there's just a ramp to bring you up. And then like I mentioned, the walls are a blueprint. So really simple. So I just took concrete foundations and used the 2-meter, and then every other one I placed a half foundation so that you get that little bit of depth. And then I just ran the full frame windows up through all of them. I decided to make the center just one big thing of glass foundations, so you can go over and you can see everything moving around, all the pipes, all the material will be moving through here. For as much that it does, it turned out to be a nice, fairly compact factory. And then at the very back, we can see all the water extractors. Don't actually have access to them, but as long as they work, who needs to get to them, right? Maybe I should add a door somewhere. And then, you know, hindsight's 2020. I kind of forgot that this process was going to create a little bit of the polymer resin. So I totally could have done the load balancing a little bit different and included the 90 that's coming out of here. I think it's 90. And included it with this process. But at the same time, I don't actually know if I have a need for any more polymer resin, or at least not right now. So I'm not too worried about it. Alright, so real quickly we'll run through the startup process. There's a couple things that I've left undone, like there should be a pipe that goes from here to the floor. But what I want is for the turbo fuel to kind of back up, and then I'll connect the nitric acid and get the rocket fuel going. I'm doing the same thing with both the polymer resin and the compacted coal on that side. I'm going to let it build up into the storage unit just a little bit. So since both of the processes are relying on some of this to cycle back to get the full amount, I want to build up a little bit of a stockpile here so that when I plug it in, it can just pretty much instantly run at 100%. I hope that makes sense. And last but not least, the drones. I went ahead and tested the throughput for the aluminum because I wasn't sure if one drone would be able to handle it, and it couldn't quite. It can do just over 200 at the distance that it's traveling, but it couldn't get me to 250. So by adding a drone at the other end, and both of them being able to run back and forth, I'll have no problem. So to get everything started smoothly, I place fuel in that drone bay, but it's just going to be stuck in this holding pattern until this drone takes off. And this one won't take off until I feed it with fuel. So when I flip the switch with my priority power switch, these will turn on, but they won't take off until I dump some rocket fuel in there. The iron plates already has fuel in here because I want that one to go ahead and just take off right away. But this one I'm going to fuel manually at the very end because it's the last process to get going. This factory I'm going to go ahead and move all the way to priority group 2. Once I start using drones, some of them are going to be for some pretty critical parts. I envision I'll use some for the nuclear power plant, and so I don't want these to ever shut off. The drone has made its return trip from the home base, getting the iron plates right on time. And now that all the fuel and heavy oil residue machines are all backed up, I can go ahead and get the compacted coal and the polymer resin flowing. And it very quickly builds up a few stacks, so we can go ahead and get this plugged in now. Alright, and the compacted coal has built up a little bit of a buffer, so let's go ahead and get this one started. And that's the plastic all up to 100%. And the reason I'm letting the turbo fuel back up is because I need all of these pipes at the bottom to fill up completely so that this all works. So it's just easier to make sure that everything is completely full. Beautiful. There we go. Now that that's backed up, I can go ahead and horizontal, vertical, and plug this in. And now that the rocket fuel is being made, let's go ahead and get our aluminum drone going. All I need to do for that is drop off, we'll just throw 25 in there. Yeah, needed at least 15. And there they go, feeding all the drone ports. I think I forgot to show off the inside of this one, so I guess before we end here, this is what ended up happening. So yeah, I may need to redesign these a little bit in the future and give myself just a little bit more space because this got interesting. But this was the load balancing. So this right here is doing the 16 2/3 iron plates. So it's unloading from the drone port. Since I have to use a Mark 1 for that, that means right here I need to use a Mark 2 because it's going to have the 60 from here and whatever else I'm returning. Since it got pretty cramped, I had to squeeze some of these in pretty close. Mark 1 out of here, so that's 60. Split that in half, so 30 and 30. This 30 then gets split all three ways. There's 10, 10, and 10. So I've basically taken 10 out of here. And on this line right here is 50. So with this 50, we split it three ways, and there's the 16 2/3 on each of those. So recombine all of this and send it right back. And I'm left with my 16 2/3 here. The aluminum was pretty easy. It just got a little bit spread out. So got the Mark 3, so that's 270, goes into a splitter. I've got 60 on this one, and the remaining 210 on here. With the 60, I just split that all three ways. So here's 20 on here, and here's 20 on here. So I've sent back 20 and recombined the rest to give me my 250. So the load balancing wasn't bad. It was just trying to fit it all in here. Got a little bit tricky. But hey, it works, and there's no clipping. And that's 960 plastic and 250 packaged rocket fuel. That is mission complete. That is going to do it for this one. Thank you again so much for being here. I now have all the resources I need and the drone power to transport them. I can now create my large electronics factory in the grassy fields. I'll be working on that next, so look forward to that. And thanks for watching.